At this moment, not all cultivators on the cultivation star that had been swept by the crimson radiance knew the reason for the red sky, and in fact, almost the vast majority had their own completely different guesses about the red sky that occurred once every 5,000 years. Only a very small number of truly powerful beings could recognize the origin of this crimson light and knew that beyond the Destiny Star, the East Sea Demon Spirit Gate had opened. The crimson radiance spread, but it was not the end of the tidal phenomenon. It was only the beginning. The crimson radiance paused for a moment before suddenly flashing violently once more. This time, it did not spread. Instead, it rapidly shrank back at an accelerating speed. It was as if the tide was receding, unstoppable, with an unimaginable, strange force pulling it quickly toward the East Sea, outside the Destiny Star. If it were just the retreat of the crimson radiance, it would be one thing, but it wasn't just the red light retreating. Along with it were countless unclaimed treasures, magical artifacts, spirit stones, jade slips, immortal jade, and all sorts of other objects. Even some strange demonic beasts or powerful spiritual entities that lived in the starry sky were among them. All of these treasures and items, absorbed and devoured by the tidal phenomenon from the East Sea Demon Spirit Gate outside the Destiny Star, were wrapped within the crimson radiance. At an unimaginable speed, they rushed back with thunderous roars that shook the stars. The speed of their retreat was slightly slower than the spread of the crimson radiance, but not by much. If seen from another angle, one could clearly observe that centered on the East Sea Demon Spirit Gate outside the Destiny Star, the crimson radiance was retreating rapidly, like the tide pulling back. At this moment, the crimson radiance pierced through space, through the starry sky, and through all the cultivation stars, as if there were no distance at all before the red light. Just after the time of 3 incense sticks, cultivators surrounding the East Sea Demon Spirit Gate saw in the distance, or far away, a line of red waves like 1,000 galloping horses across the horizon. These waves were circular and swept toward the East Sea Demon Spirit Gate. Wang Lin's pupils suddenly contracted, revealing a deep shock in his eyes. The tidal phenomenon had already made him feel an intense sense of unreality, but now, upon seeing the red waves sweeping from all directions, he took a deep breath. In fact, at this moment, it wasn't just Wang Lin. Among the surrounding cultivators, anyone seeing the East Sea Demon Spirit Gate open and the tidal phenomenon for the first time felt a shock in their hearts that was no less than Wang Lin's. Some even became completely lost in the awe, losing their sense of doubt. A moment ago, the crimson radiance seemed like distant red waves on the horizon, but the next instant, the waves howled past, penetrating through the cultivators and rushing past them. At the same time, jade slips, spirit stones, immortal jade, magical artifacts, and countless other coveted treasures all raced across the area, crossing between the cultivators with incredible speed, wrapped within the crimson radiance. Some enormous demonic beasts, corpses, and large magical artifacts also swept by, but these treasures were all wrapped in the crimson radiance. The strange power within this red light caused these wrapped items to seem like they lost their solid form, passing through the cultivators' bodies directly without causing any impact. It was as if everything before them was an illusion. Wang Lin personally saw a massive demonic beast with a single horn on its head and black lightning crackling across its body. Its cultivation level was no weaker than that of a peak cultivator. The giant beast charged toward him at a speed he could not evade, passing directly through his body. As it passed, Wang Lin took a deep breath and quickly turned around. His eyes flashed with electric light as he carefully observed all the magical artifacts and treasures he could see within the crimson radiance. Celestial gold earth, Qionghe liquid, watering stone, spirit rhinoceros horn. Wang Lin casually glanced over them and immediately felt his heart race. These materials were all excellent for crafting magical artifacts, according to the ancient god Tusi's memories. And this is... Wang Lin's gaze suddenly sharpened as he focused on a massive sword within the crimson radiance. The sword looked like a door plank, gleaming with golden light but faintly rusted and damaged. The sword flickered and disappeared into the red light. Wang Lin's eyes gleamed with sharpness. Looking around at the other cultivators, each one's eyes were flashing as they observed the various treasures in the crimson radiance, each with their own thoughts. At this moment, the tidal phenomenon was nearing its end, about to finish, but just as it seemed to be over, another red wave howled toward them from the distance. This wave was unbelievably fast, almost instantly crashing toward them. At the moment the wave appeared, Tian Yunzi's expression, which had remained calm up until now, suddenly changed. He suddenly turned around, his gaze flashing like lightning, staring at the rapidly approaching red wave of energy. Sword Venerable Ling Tianho's eyes exploded with an unimaginable brilliance, his gaze burning like torches, intensely fixated on the depths of the energy wave sweeping towards them. At this moment, it wasn't just the two of them. Around them, among countless cultivators, elderly figures suddenly dashed out at an almost imperceptible speed. These elderly figures were famous old monsters from the Destiny Star, originally here to show their juniors a thing or two. However, upon seeing the additional energy wave and what lay within it, they suddenly seemed to grow thousands of years younger and all rushed forward. This shocking scene immediately captured the attention of all the cultivators present. Wang Lin's eyes flickered, fixated on the rapidly approaching wave of energy. The wave's speed was so fast that it almost seemed to flash through the bodies of the many cultivators, rushing toward the East Sea Demon Spirit Gate in the distance. If it were just about the speed, it would have been one thing, but what made this crimson radiance even more bizarre was that it blocked the penetration of divine sense, preventing any gaze from piercing through. Any attempt to use divine powers to explore its interior would be repelled, making it impossible to see what lay within. This caused even figures like Tian Yunzi and Ling Tianho to change their expressions. The moment Wang Lin's divine sense encountered the crimson radiance, it felt like he had entered a labyrinth. His divine sense instantly collapsed, and had he not quickly withdrawn, it would have shattered and harmed him. Looking around at the other cultivators, many turned pale, some even spitting blood from their mouths, their eyes dimming, clearly having been injured by the wave due to the slow retraction of their divine senses. Do not use your divine sense to examine it. This object is not something you juniors can perceive. A voice slowly emerged from among the famous old monsters, belonging to a frail elder. As the wave passed through the crowd, just before it disappeared into the distant East Sea, Wang Lin's eyes flashed. 3 wisps of gray energy suddenly appeared above his brow, rapidly spinning into 3 complex symbols that flickered on his forehead. At the same time, these 3 symbols seemed to melt, and with a thought, they immediately formed a fine, swirling pattern around his eyes. The moment this pattern formed, Wang Lin's eyes suddenly radiated with a moon-like brilliance, and they emitted a beam of light that stretched half a foot forward. In an instant, his gaze seemed capable of piercing through the heavens, directly penetrating the void, chasing after the dissipating crimson radiance, as though breaking through bamboo, piercing straight into the energy wave. He wanted to see what was inside. Wang Lin's gaze shot into the crimson radiance, endlessly extending. All he saw before him was red, and a strange force continually invaded his vision, causing sharp pain as it retaliated in a bizarre way, sending waves of discomfort through his body. His eyes immediately turned crimson, tears pouring down with traces of blood mixed in. Grinding his teeth, he let out a low growl. The symbols surrounding his eyes emitted thick gray mist, which didn't spread out but immediately turned into threads, rapidly entering his pupils. In the blink of an eye, Wang Lin's eyes had turned a deep red with thick gray streaks running through them. With this, Wang Lin's gaze seemed to be infused with new life, crazily shooting forward, breaking through layer after layer of the red light, forcefully colliding with the strange powers attempting to hinder its progress. Finally, just as the red light vanished into the East Sea Demon Spirit Gate, Wang Lin's gaze broke through all the crimson radiance, and he saw what lay within the depths of the red wave, the object that caused Tian Yunzi and the others to turn pale. It was a token, a shining golden token engraved with runes. The moment Wang Lin saw the token, a large amount of blood immediately flowed from his eyes, and an unimaginable pain surged within him, causing his heart to shudder. He closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the red wave had already disappeared into the East Sea Demon Spirit Gate. At this moment, Wang Lin's eyes were filled with countless blood threads, but strangely, within these blood threads, flashes of gray lines shimmered. His gaze now carried an eerie, otherworldly aura. In the distance, the woman seated on the blood jade, Yao Shishue, happened to glance at Wang Lin. The instant her eyes met his, she involuntarily trembled, her face turning pale as she hurriedly lowered her head, her heart stirred with a storm of emotions. This gaze, now I understand why Father told me to keep an eye on this person. The sound of 4 earth-shaking booms echoed in the air, as above the East Sea Demon Spirit Gate, amidst the vast array of floating objects, 4 sword shadows spun like whirlpools. In an instant, they solidified at 4 points, and with a violent tearing motion, a jagged and irregular entrance was ripped open in the middle of the floating objects. Flashes of cyan and red light flickered both inside and outside the entrance, while eerie sounds, like the wailing of spirits, could be heard emanating from within. The entrance, once a void, now clearly held some profound mystery, as everyone who looked at it could see something hidden deep inside. The East Sea Demon Spirit Gate is opened. Those entering, move quickly. Sword Venerable Ling Tianho's words were short, but his tone was filled with a chilling sharpness. As soon as his words fell, the 12 sword prodigies behind him shot out like 12 sharp sword glows, howling as they flew toward the entrance. One by one, they entered the entrance, and when the last disciple stepped through, Sword Venerable Ling Tianho's eyes narrowed. He raised his right hand, flicking his fingers through the air. Immediately, a sword chi whistled from his fingertip, heading straight toward the last disciple to enter. Hold this sword chi, it will be your divine protection for survival. As soon as Ling Tianho's words were spoken, the last disciple respectfully received the sword chi in his hand, while Sword Venerable Ling Tianho bowed slightly and stepped into the entrance himself. At this moment, the greedy wolf, who had been behind Ling Tianho, had already vanished. His figure had transformed into the last sword chi, following the 12 sword prodigies into the East Sea Demon Spirit Gate. Tian Yunzi, with a calm and deep gaze, looked at Sword Venerable Ling Tianho before speaking slowly. Disciples of Tian Yun's sect, enter. Including Wang Lin, 10 disciples simultaneously responded and flew toward the entrance. However, Wang Lin's pace was slightly slower. He didn't rush in but waited for others to enter before stepping forward and entering the entrance himself. After all disciples of the Great Luo Sword sect and Tian Yun's sect had entered the Demon Spirit Gate, various other sects and ancient disciples followed suit, transforming into long rainbows as they rushed toward the entrance. On top of the blood jade, Yao Shishue's expression showed signs of contemplation. With a bite of her silver teeth, she transformed into a streak of bloodlight and rushed toward the entrance. Half an hour after the entrance opened, monks from all around began to enter, and by the end, several hundred people had entered, including disciples of some well-known ancient figures. Half an hour later, Sword Venerable Ling Tianho summoned his hand, and the 4 whirlpools that had torn open the entrance shook before suddenly freezing, transforming into 4 sword lights that swiftly returned to Ling Tianho, hovering behind him as 4 flashing sword shadows. With the disappearance of the 4 sword shadows, the entrance to the East Sea Demon Spirit Gate was quickly filled with swirling cyan and red light. Within the blink of an eye, the entrance vanished without a trace. At this point, most of the monks had already scattered. Even those who hadn't left before now began to depart. After a short time, only a handful of cultivators remained in the vast starry sky outside the East Sea. These remaining monks were all famous ancient figures, each of them with godlike cultivation, and they were not unfamiliar with each other. The reason they had not left was because of the last wave of red energy that had entered the gate. This was related to a great secret concerning the Destiny Star. At this moment, everyone in the starry sky was silent. No one spoke a word. Sword Venerable Ling Tianho's gaze sharpened as he looked into the distance at Tian Yunzi and called out, "Tian Yunzi, that last wave of energy contained a token." Tian Yunzi's gaze remained calm. He glanced at Sword Venerable Ling Tianho, then at the old friends around him. He smiled slightly and said, "Yes, it is the token, and it is the 3rd one. I never expected that the opening of the East Sea Demon Spirit Gate would actually reveal the token. Now that it has been absorbed by the East Sea, there's no need to rush. The gate opens every 5,000 years, and each trial lasts 500 years. So we've agreed that in 200 years, we'll gather here again and enter once more. I believe everyone has heard of the events from years past, so this time, we must be fully prepared. I think 200 years is more than enough time for everyone to prepare." After speaking, Tian Yunzi cupped his fists and with a wave of his sleeve, his figure stepped into the air and slowly vanished into the distance. Sword Venerable Ling Tianho snorted lightly, turning around and casting one last deep glance at the East Sea Demon Spirit Gate. His body transformed into a streak of sword light and disappeared without a trace. As the two left, the remaining ancient figures, each with their own thoughts, began to disperse in small groups of 3 or 5. Outside the East Sea Demon Spirit Gate, silence returned once again. From a distance, the vast floating sea seemed to gently ripple, with countless floating objects slowly swaying, emitting strange and eerie auras. The flashes of cyan and red continued to flicker inside. Sword Venerable Ling Tianho transformed into a streak of sword light, soaring straight into the void. The destination, the location of the Great Luo Sword sect. This place was neither on Destiny Star nor among the 5 subsidiary stars. Rather, it sat atop a massive celestial body that Ling Tianho had forcibly drawn from the depths of the starry sky. Though it couldn't compare to Destiny Star itself, This planet was several times larger than the 5 subsidiary stars. It brimmed with spiritual energy, making it an ideal place for cultivators to train. It was here that Ling Tianhou had founded the Great Luo Sword sect. He named this planet Great Luo Star. Ling Tianhou moved with thunderous speed, piercing through the heavenly wind of Great Luo Star. With a single step, he arrived in the eastern region of the star, his place of secluded cultivation. 200 years. Within that time, I will completely refine this immortal sword. Using the technique of ninefold fusion and a demon spirit, I'll forge it into a true demon sword. When the time comes to obtain the token, my chances will double. With a gleam in his eyes, Ling Tianhou vanished into his secluded chamber. Meanwhile, Tian Yunzi had returned to Destiny Star. Without delay, he entered the multicolored treasure pagoda atop the tricolor peaks. There, he sat cross-legged. Beside him lay several jet-black beast bones, glossy, and exuding a faint sinister aura. My disciple Wang Lin truly is one blessed by fortune. But how far can that fortune take him? Tian Yunzi's expression remained calm. With a flick of his right hand, he summoned the beast bones into the air, then shook them gently, scattering them across the floor. His eyes flashed as he studied the bones. Slowly, a faint smile appeared at the corner of his lips. Within the Eastern Sea Demon Spirit Gate, chaos reigned. One could even say it was a world unto itself. Perhaps someone knew just how vast this place was, but Wang Lin clearly wasn't among them. Upon entering the gate, he felt as though he had passed through a surface of water and sunk beneath it. What spread before him was a desolate wasteland of staggering size. This place had sky, land, even seas, but it was not part of any known cultivation star. Wang Lin now stood in the middle of an endless plain, no trace of another soul around him. The other 9 members of the Tian Yun sect had been forcibly separated the moment they entered by a strange power. Their whereabouts were unknown. This Eastern Sea Demon Spirit Gate is unlike any place I've entered before, Wang Lin thought. It feels more like a mortal world than a treasure-laden trial ground. His divine sense spread out as he gently floated into the air, drifting forward through the sky. I imagine the other sect's cultivators were also scattered like this, each set on their own path through the Eastern Sea. Sun Yunshan once said the journey here lasts 500 years. That means we'll be stuck in this realm for 5 centuries. Wang Lin's expression was calm, but his eyes were thoughtful as he flew. To mortals, 500 years is a span of generations. But to cultivators like us, it passes in the blink of an eye. Still, I have much to do during this time. The slaughter immortal art, I must master it completely. That's my first goal. And besides, even if that Tuasin breaks free from the Vermilion Bird Star, he'll never guess that I'm here. That gives me 500 years of preparation. A glimmer flashed in Wang Lin's eyes, a faint smile curving his lips. He had made up his mind the moment he heard Sun Yunshan mention the time limit of the Eastern Sea Demon Spirit Gate. He had to enter. After all, the person Wang Lin feared most was Tuasin of the ancient god ruins. If that man escaped his prison, Wang Lin would be his first target. And with Wang Lin's current cultivation level, defeating Tuasin was almost impossible. That was why he had pushed himself to learn the slaughter immortal art and refine the seal of life. He knew he couldn't overpower Tuasin, but perhaps, with the right technique, he could survive. Once the slaughter immortal art reached mastery, and he condensed enough seals of life, he might have a chance to resist Tuasin's onslaught. That was his first objective. I wonder what level my cultivation will reach after 500 years. Wang Lin's eyes sparkled with anticipation as he drifted deeper into thought. There's also the matter of Senior Zhou. That's another reason I came here. With the insights Zhou left in the pagoda, locating the seal where Sword Venerable Ling Tianhou resides shouldn't be too difficult. If I can rescue Senior Zhou with his cultivation and the power of the immortal sword, I'll gain an overwhelming combat advantage in a short time. And then there's that massive sword I saw outside the Eastern Sea Demon Spirit Gate. It looked nearly identical to the colossal fortune from years ago. The contemplative gleam in Wang Lin's eyes deepened. The colossal fortune contained a sword soul technique. If that sword truly is the same, and I can learn the technique within, the power of my immortal sword will multiply many times over. Well, no use rushing. Everything must proceed step by step. My true body remains hidden on that concealed star, and no one will find it easily. Tuasi, the ancient god, is still locked in the Vermilion Bird tomb. He only senses my clone, not the real me. That gives me a perfect opportunity. These 500 years will be time well spent, to grow stronger, and prepare for what's to come. Wang Lin put aside his thoughts. Unknowingly, after all the contemplation during the journey, he had already flown countless miles. Even under the sweep of his divine sense, he saw no unusual sight. The entire land was still a desolate plain, stretching far and wide. The plain was eerily quiet, with no sounds at all. Within the range of Wang Lin's divine sense, there was no life besides himself. Wang Lin's expression remained unchanged as he continued flying. Time passed slowly, and 10 days later, while Wang Lin was still flying, his expression suddenly changed. His gaze became sharp as lightning, and he immediately looked toward the distance. With a single glance, he took a step forward, and in that moment, he seemed like a shooting star, disappearing from his original position and moving with a speed many times faster than before, suddenly teleporting ahead. Beyond the desolate plain was a dense, deep forest filled with thick greenery. At this moment, inside the forest, a person was lying down. Most of his body was naked, with only a layer of greenish sap from plants smeared over his skin, giving him a faint green tint. He lay motionless, his breathing so faint it was almost imperceptible. After a while, he seemed to almost vanish entirely, his figure completely blending into the surroundings. Anyone who wasn't paying close attention would never notice him. Not long after, distant sounds of running came from the forest. Soon after, a beast, about the size of a calf with sharp tusks on its mouth, roared and emerged. The beast resembled a wild boar but exuded a vicious aura, clearly a brutal and violent creature. However, there was no fluctuation of spiritual energy coming from it. The beast roared and leaped out of the forest. At the same time, the person lying motionless on the ground suddenly sprang into action. In his hand appeared a long black rod, and at the tip of the rod was a rusty blade emitting a faint glow. The person moved with incredible speed, and in the instant the beast charged out, his long rod thrust with great force, aimed directly at the beast. The beast, clearly startled by the sudden presence, recoiled in surprise. But more than fear, it was anger, and it roared, charging straight at the rod without dodging. There was a series of cracking sounds as the rod split in the middle. The person, covered in green liquid, twisted his body and grabbed the rusty blade on the rod. Without hesitation, he leapt onto the beast's back, using his left hand to grasp its mane while his right hand drove the rusty blade straight into the beast's neck. The beast, in pain, let out an even more agonizing scream and struggled violently, throwing itself into chaos with the person still on its back. Wang Lin's figure appeared in midair. His eyes glowed with an unusual light as he watched the scene below, the person and the beast. This was the only living being he had encountered in the past 10 days. The beast's eyes were now red, releasing piercing roars, but the person on its back remained calm. His left hand gripped the mane tightly, and his body stayed perfectly balanced on the beast, unwavering. His right hand, steady as a mountain, kept the rusty blade firmly embedded in the beast's neck. After a short time, the beast's eyes dimmed. The blood flowing from its neck was no longer red but glowing faintly with an eerie light. Finally, with a loud thud, the beast collapsed to the ground, motionless. The person on the beast's back let out a breath of relief, pulling out the rusty blade. However, at that very moment, his expression suddenly changed. He quickly turned and looked up at the sky, confusion flashing in his eyes. Wang Lin furrowed his brow and focused his gaze on the man. He was quite surprised. Although the man had no spiritual energy, he possessed an extraordinary sense, able to vaguely detect someone's presence around him. Wang Lin's body slowly condensed in the void, and his cold gaze remained locked on the man. The person, who had smeared himself with green liquid, froze when he saw Wang Lin suddenly appear in midair. His eyes flashed with an unusual light, and he immediately leapt into the air, landing on the dead beast's body. Gripping the rusty blade in his right hand, he stared at Wang Lin, his voice hoarse as he quickly said, "The beast is mine." Wang Lin's gaze sharpened, and he smiled faintly, replying, "I'm not here to compete with you." The man stared at Wang Lin for a moment, then nodded. Slowly, he crouched down and, with some effort, grabbed the beast's mane, dragging it back toward the forest. As he did, he kept his eyes fixed on Wang Lin, showing deep wariness. The man continued dragging the beast until he had moved a significant distance from the forest. Wang Lin remained still, watching him with interest. To him, the man seemed quite intriguing. After dragging the beast a good way, the man finally let out a sigh of relief when he realized Wang Lin hadn't followed. He continued hauling the beast, making his way through winding paths. By the time the sun was about to set, he arrived at a valley in the forest, where he entered with the beast in tow. As the man stepped into the valley, a faint ripple passed through the air, barely noticeable and vanishing almost instantly, making it hard to detect. The moment this person's figure entered the valley, Wang Lin's body swayed, and he slowly stepped out from the void. His eyes flashed as he carefully observed his surroundings, his gaze revealing a strange gleam. Outside this valley, someone has set up an unusual formation using great supernatural powers. This formation can conceal any trace of life force. Had it not been for the proximity, it would have been nearly impossible to detect the presence of anyone here. Looking at the traces of the formation, it's evident that it has been here for an unknown number of years. Some of the layout techniques used are clearly different from those of cultivators from the Cultivation Alliance, which means this formation was most likely set up by ancient-era cultivators. Wang Lin's gaze was sharp. He didn't rush into the valley but instead stayed on the periphery, carefully inspecting it. In the end, he drew this conclusion. This place is interesting. The East Sea Demon Spirit Gate here is quite different from any treasure hunting spots I've visited before, Wang Lin said, his eyes glowing with a strange light as he looked at the valley protected by the formation. After a brief pause, Wang Lin extended his right hand and pointed forward into the void. Immediately, a flash of spiritual light flickered on his fingertip, and with a flick, the light shot forward, swiftly entering the valley. However, as soon as this spiritual light entered the valley, a rumbling sound suddenly came from the formation outside the valley. A surge of cyan energy erupted from within the formation, as if it were devouring the light, completely swallowing the spiritual glow Wang Lin had sent out. Then, a loud commotion immediately came from within the valley. Wang Lin's eyes flickered, and he took a few steps back, instantly vanishing from the spot. Inside the valley, 3 figures emerged, each half-naked, their bodies covered in green liquid. They were holding rusted weapons, and as they stepped out of the valley, their eyes immediately flashed with wariness as they cautiously surveyed their surroundings. After a moment, they looked at each other with a hint of confusion and turned to head back into the valley. As their figures disappeared into the valley, Wang Lin's figure transformed into a wisp of cyan smoke, following closely behind. However, as soon as he touched the formation protecting the valley, it immediately activated again, flashing with cyan light. A strong sense of danger instantly enveloped the surroundings. Wang Lin furrowed his brows and took several steps back. As he retreated, the cyan light from the formation gradually faded away. Interesting. Wang Lin's gaze turned cold. The formation's function was clearly protective. It safeguarded everything within the valley, preventing anyone from entering. If someone attempted to force their way in, the formation would unleash its full power, killing any intruders. This formation was extremely clever. After studying it briefly, Wang Lin realized that it would be impossible to break it in the short term. His gaze darkened, and he simply sat cross-legged outside the valley, quietly observing the formation, without speaking a word. His appearance immediately attracted the attention of those within the valley. Almost as soon as Wang Lin settled down, the valley flashed with bright light, and 4 people emerged. 3 of them were the same 3 from earlier, and the 4th was a man with a murderous expression. He was holding a long black rod that also emitted a ghostly light. As he stepped out, without saying a word, the man hurled the rod forward with great force, directly stabbing toward Wang Lin. At the same time, a bloodthirsty smile appeared at the corner of his mouth as he stepped forward, ready to charge. The 3 people behind him also roared and rushed toward Wang Lin, holding their rusted weapons. Wang Lin's expression remained calm as he glanced at them. The long rod flying toward him instantly shattered. The bloodthirsty man froze, staring dumbfounded at the shattered rod in midair, unable to speak. The 3 behind him also stopped in their tracks. Without further conversation, Wang Lin's right hand reached out, and the 4 of them immediately screamed as their bodies were ensnared by an invisible force, lifted into the air, and thrown aside, where they were imprisoned by Wang Lin, unable to move. Normally, Wang Lin wouldn't bother dealing with such people who lacked spiritual power, but this place was too strange. A mere valley contained such an ancient formation, and to understand the reason behind all of this, Wang Lin had no choice but to search for clues from the people inside the valley. After imprisoning the four, Wang Lin remained expressionless and continued meditating. Not long after, the valley was filled with a commotion, followed by several flashes of light. This time, two people emerged from the valley. The blood they spilled was not directed at Wang Lin, but instead fell on the ground outside the valley. After completing their task, the two immediately turned and ran back toward the valley. Wang Lin's expression remained unchanged as he reached out with his right hand, immediately imprisoning them and casually tossing them aside. Looking at the ground where the two had spilled blood, Wang Lin noticed that blood-red mist began to rise from it. Initially, the mist wasn't very dense, but after a few breaths, it began to bubble like boiling blood fog, rapidly spreading until it completely covered the area outside the valley. Wang Lin remained seated, cross-legged, his gaze indifferent as he looked towards the valley, without performing any spells or divine arts. As the blood mist became thick to its peak, suddenly, a violent roar echoed through the valley. From within the mist, a black figure emerged, and its silhouette gave off a strange sensation, as though it didn't belong. "Return, my people, and you, leave my clan. Otherwise die." An icy voice coldly emanated from the black figure within the blood mist. Wang Lin's expression remained unchanged. He snorted lightly, stood up, and took a sudden step forward. As his foot landed, countless ripples immediately appeared around him, reverberating violently. With every step, the ripples surged forward with a loud rumbling sound. In the instant of his step, the ripples clashed violently, and within a blink of an eye, the vast blood mist covering the valley seemed to evaporate like hot water splashed onto snow, emitting a series of sizzling sounds. The mist quickly dissipated at a visible speed. The entire process lasted less than 3 breaths. 3 breaths later, the blood mist was completely gone, leaving behind only the black-robed figure standing outside the valley, eyes filled with shock, staring blankly at Wang Lin, who was slowly approaching. The figure immediately tried to retreat, but just as he moved, Wang Lin extended his right hand and grasped the air. The figure was involuntarily pulled forward, landing directly in front of Wang Lin. With a cold glance, Wang Lin casually threw the figure aside, imprisoning him and tossing him next to the other 6, all together. After finishing these actions, Wang Lin clasped his hands behind his back, surveyed the formation for a few moments, and then sat down cross-legged again, silent. The thunderous divine art immediately quieted those within the valley. This silence lasted for 3 full days. For 3 days, Wang Lin sat unmoving, and not a single sound came from the valley. On the 4th morning, the formation outside the valley suddenly rumbled. At the same time, an old man with full white hair appeared, leaning on a black cane. He stepped out from the valley, his frail body showing visible signs of weakness. Behind him, more than 10 half-naked individuals followed. These people were all emaciated, but their eyes were bright and sharp. "Outsider cultivator, you have been here for several days. We were reckless before. I hope you won't hold it against us. I am Ouyang Hua, the elder of this valley. How about you release my people, and we talk things over?" The old man said in a soft voice after stepping out of the valley. "Since I was old enough to remember, I have always lived here. To this day, I do not know how many years have passed." Ouyang Hua sat outside the valley, a bone-made table in front of him with some fruit on it. Wang Lin sat cross-legged opposite him, his expression unchanged. The people Wang Lin had imprisoned had already been released and returned to the valley. This place, I do not know its exact size, but I know that 30 million miles away, there is a huge city, the ancient demon city. When I was young, I gained enlightenment there and obtained a long life. Outsider cultivator, I do not know what you seek, but it is likely that such a thing is not something a small tribe like mine can possess. Ouyang Hua spoke calmly, his voice steady. "Do you know where I come from?" Wang Lin asked, his gaze steady. "From the moment you appeared outside the valley, I knew you were not from this land. You and your companions come once every 5,000 years, and each time you come, you bring endless bloodshed and turmoil. So, I do not welcome your arrival." Ouyang Hua sighed lightly. Wang Lin's expression remained indifferent as he spoke. "Apart from me, do you have any news of other outsiders?" "Not for now, and I hope there will not be any in the future. Outsiders, there is nothing here for you. I have said all that needs to be said. Please leave. You can go to the ancient demon city. There you will surely find what you seek," Yanghua replied decisively. You've mentioned what I seek twice. What is it? Wang Lin asked calmly. Yanghua's face darkened. He stood up and looked at Wang Lin. Outsider, I have said all I needed to. That you have some divine arts. Had I not been unwilling to entangle with you further, I would not have easily let you off for capturing my people. Outsider, do not miscalculate. In 3 breaths, if you are still here, do not blame me for showing no mercy. Wang Lin's gaze turned cold. He stared at the old man and slapped the air with his right hand. Instantly, a green light gathered in his palm, flashing intensely. With a swift motion, it shot forward, heading straight for the valley. Above the valley, the formation immediately activated, and as the green light fell, a loud rumbling sound echoed through the air. Wang Lin let out a cold snort. With a slap to his storage pouch, the forbidden banner appeared in his hand. With a sharp flick, 999 layers of restriction runes instantly transformed into streams of black restriction chi that surged outward, engulfing the area. At that moment, surrounded by the dense black mist, Wang Lin's figure looked every bit like a demon sovereign descending upon the world. His icy gaze radiated a terrifying aura that intensified the overwhelming pressure in the air. Break the formation. Wang Lin's voice echoed as if from the depths of the underworld. With that single word, the 999 strands of restriction chi erupted, violently crashing against the formation surrounding the valley. Yanghua's expression changed drastically, his face darkening like storm clouds. He locked his gaze on Wang Lin, and after a brief pause, let out a cold chuckle. In a sudden shimmer, his figure collapsed into countless crystalline fragments, vanishing into nothingness. Wang Lin's eyes remained frigid. He had already discerned that this Yanghua was merely a projected illusion, not a corporeal being. Had he not spent time observing from outside the valley, carefully studying the ancient restriction with knowledge passed down from the ancient era, he wouldn't have risked releasing those clansmen so easily. Forming a hand seal, Wang Lin pointed toward the formation and softly muttered, "Detonate." A thunderous roar shook the heavens and the earth as a violent tremor rippled outward from the valley. The ancient formation instantly flared with blinding cyan glow. At the same time, Yanghua's aged voice echoed from within the valley, "Outsider, I give you 3 breaths. Leave now, or I will activate the attack array. You will die without question." "Condense," Wang Lin uttered quietly. With that one word, the 999 strands of restriction chi once again exploded with a deafening rumble. Each one self-detonated, unleashing immense shockwaves that pounded against the formation with relentless force. The formation trembled violently once more. Yanghua's voice was abruptly cut off, replaced by a furious roar from within the valley. At that moment, a surge of cyan light exploded across the outer edge of the valley. That light grew in intensity almost instantly, to the point it seemed to reach its peak radiance. From the ground, cliff walls, flowers, trees, every object around, waves of cyan ripples slowly emerged. As soon as these ripples appeared, a mysterious force drew them in, pulling them toward the center of the valley where the cyan glow pulsed. The glow twisted and scattered like flames, spreading outward in eerie patterns. In a blink, the light transformed into a colossal cyan phantom. It had a vaguely human shape, standing several zhang tall, though too ethereal to make out its features. Cyan radiance pulsed through and around it, giving it an eerie, otherworldly aura. The moment this phantom appeared, Yanghua's voice boomed again from within the valley. "Outsider, all of this is your doing. As your shadow, kill him. Take his soul as tonight's offering for the Demon Spirit Day." As his words fell, the cyan phantom let out a roar, one not of any human origin. It wasn't loud, yet the sky darkened and the ground trembled beneath it. Though it lasted only a moment, it made Wang Lin's eyes narrow. A cold smile curled at his lips. He raised his right hand, formed a seal in the air, and murmured, "Restriction Law Spear." Wang Lin grasped at the air. Instantly, countless streams of black restriction chi swirled like dragons in the heavens, filling the entire sky with their presence. From within the chi, an eerie howling rose, as if heralding the descent of a demon king from the 9 netherworlds. The black mist screeched as it rushed toward Wang Lin's outstretched hand. There, a black spear, 3 zhang long and as thick as an arm, took form. Crackling with black lightning and surrounded by peals of thunder, it radiated a crushing aura. At its spearhead, a glint of pitch-black light, so dark it was almost painful to behold, shone even under the noonday sun, making it all the more piercing. Almost the instant Yanghua's voice ended, Wang Lin hurled the spear. It transformed into a streak of black lightning and shot directly at the cyan phantom within the formation. The spear tore through the air like a divine stroke from the heavens, splitting the sky as if it were cleaving reality itself. Its momentum threatened to shatter worlds, its speed rivaling clouds that vanish across 1,000 miles in an instant. As it roared forward, it drew upon the nine heavens' thunder, summoning the hidden thunderclaps of the world to follow in its wake.